my channel. Um, so I talked in my last video about the months leading up to treatment for me, and so if you haven't watched the last video, I think it's important to watch the last video because this will probably like not make sense or like kind of, yeah, it just probably won't make sense. So please watch the first video to this, which I'm posting before. But so anyways, where I left off in my last video was that I was witnessing a lot of domestic violence, and I was living with this pimp and his main girl and whatever girls they had in and out, and it led me to get my own room. But it also showed me, or it kind of scared me into seeing that this is where my life was probably going to end up, right? And so that was where like the little seed was planted of like, obviously seeds were planted along the way. Like my family was always telling me I needed to go to treatment. My grandma was always telling me I needed to go to treatment. I also had a CPS case that had been open forever, and I knew that was probably coming to an end, but that's where this part is going to get to. So this is probably pretty important, I should share, because if anybody watching this is like in my area and wants to know more about this service that I got so much out of, please like write me on Instagram or leave me a comment or whatever. But I had a PCAP worker, which is like parent child advocate program or something like that. Anyway, she was like somebody who was there to assist me with like anything basically. I got that service when I first had Caden, and it was like to help me get to like doctor's appointments or stuff like that. But since I had fallen off and I was getting high again, her role kind of changed, and she was there to help me rides to doctor's appointments still, but like if I needed help with getting to treatment or trying to help me get sober, like the little stuff that you need to do to get sober, which was like drug and alcohol assessment, bed dates, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, so I had a PCAP worker, and she was always stopping by, and she would come stop by. She would like take me out to lunch and help encourage me to get back on track. But that the first seed was planted when Eric was gone and wasn't talking to me anymore, and I started looking at the world in a different manner, because I was like, where is my life going to end up? And so I was scared, and there was a point where my grandma used to always call me. She would always call me, and she always would call me. She would come find me and bring me food, and so there was a point where her and my aunt, they lived together, and they had my girls, and but I was CPS involved, obviously, but we're hitting like October at this point, and my grandma is like, she ended up calling me one day and is like, Kayla, I got some stuff in the mail for you from CPS, and your case is closing, or they're terminating your rights. And they're terminating your rights on, I think it was like January 2nd, if I remember correctly. January 2nd is when my rights were supposed to be terminated, because I hadn't been in contact with them in over a year and hadn't seen my kids in over a year. And this was like the second time I had done this. And, my case had been open since 2015. So, they were ready to close my case. So she had called and told me my case was going to be closed and that my rights were going to get terminated. And I wish I could say that I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go. But I was so hopeless in that moment. Not even at that moment, at that time in my life, I was constantly hopeless. And I could never picture myself where I am today. I could never picture myself being a mom to these kids. It's going to be hard to get through this video without crying. I can just feel it. Because it's so crazy to live like that. It's so crazy. So like, if somebody is watching this video that has no hope, I'm telling you, and people used to tell me this, and I was like, but I've been there, and it's like, it's amazing. I never would have imagined, like, I had no hope. First of all, I didn't think I was capable of being a good mom. I didn't think it was possible to stay sober. I thought I would always want to get high, because every time I had ever gotten sober in the past, it was like I still wanted to get high the whole time. So I was like, what the heck is the point of living like this? I want to get high every day. Why am I going to force myself to stay sober if I just want to get high every single day? And, you know, so when my grandma told me that, I was just like, okay, you know, I can't lie and say it didn't make me sad. It made me sad. It made me feel like, you know, what's going to be the point in fighting after I lose my kids? Then I'm really never going to get sober, you know, and that's why when, you know, anyways, so she had told me that, and it was hard to hear, but it was like, it was another day, you know. I didn't have hope. I didn't have any self-esteem. I didn't have any self-love. I didn't have any of that. So it was like, okay, they'll be better off. I remember I used to tell myself that all the time. They'll be better off without me. Which is not the case. And I can say that today and know that's the truth, you know. My girls love me, and I love them. I would lay down my life for them at this point, and I've never... Anyways, I told you guys I was gonna cry. I told you. Don't say I didn't tell you. So anyways, so that was, you know, one of the days, and that I remember her telling me, but that wasn't even enough, you know. It wasn't until she called me and told me that Eric had written me a letter from jail, and she actually texted me that. She said, Kayla, Eric wrote you a letter, please call me back. Because she had called me, and I was getting high, and I'm like, why is my grandma calling me? I'm not answering. But then when I saw that message, I called her back. Because there were times in my youth where, like, my grandma would call, but I would be too messed up to get on the phone with her. I knew I was going to sound crazy, but when she sent me that, I was like, oh, I need to know what he's talking about, because I had tried to get in touch with him so many times, and you know, Eric's, I wish I've been through a lot, so it's hard sometimes to show my feelings the right way, but I love Eric. I've always loved him. I will always love him. And when I was in the street, especially without him, all I wanted was him. And, anyways, so when my grandma I called her back and was like, what did he say? And she said, well, he said he's done with you. He said he doesn't want to talk to you anymore. You were supposed to get clean and get the kids back and stop writing him, and the money that you sent him, he gave it away. And I was like, see, and it was like, these were like all the little things that were happening that was like, Kayla, you have got to fix this. Like, your life is really gonna be messed up if you don't take some steps in the right direction, you know? So, I wonder if you can see all this. So yeah, so I had that happen. So, the case is closing now. Eric doesn't want anything to do with me. I've got these people around and, like, these guys around that are garbage that, like, shouldn't be around. I mean, none of us were, like, you know, the best people in the world at that time. Like, you know, I was scandalous in my own right, but nobody really, you know, we were all with our own addictions. So anyways, I remember I called my PCAP worker and I was like, hey, I think I want to go to treatment, you know. But at this point, she had taken me to get my drug and alcohol assessment before. She had taken me to go get it one time. But I was dope sick at the time. And so, but she had some other meeting she had to go to. So she took me and dropped me off and gave me bus money to get home. And I think this was when before Eric had gone to jail. We had went to go do our drug and alcohol assessments, and she had taken us and then given us money to get back. And so we, instead of getting our drug and alcohol assessments, we just took the money and went and got well because we were sick. So my PCAP worker had thought that I had already had my drug and alcohol assessment. And I remember, because I was close to her, and I miss her to this day because she went on to a different job and I can't get in contact with her. But anyways, I remember being scared to tell her that, hey, I know you thought I got that drug and alcohol assessment, but I didn't. But, you know, she was the most forgiving and understanding person ever. And so when I finally told her that I wanted to get into treatment, but I didn't have my drug and alcohol assessment, she didn't judge me. She just understood. She was just like, okay, you know, and I remember her trying to call, a treatment center I had gone to before, because at this point in my addiction, like, I already knew I can't go to a 30-day treatment center. I've been using over 10 years. This is not going to work for me. I need to go to a long-term treatment center. So I was trying to go to this women's treatment center that I had been to before, but, you know, I had got kicked out the time before, and you could take your kids there, or you could have kids there. And so I was trying to get into their program, and she had made some calls, but luckily, now I say luckily, but at the time I was upset. For some reason, I think probably because there was no release of information. And if these words are not making sense to anybody, I guess I should break some of this stuff down, but I get, like, on tangents pretty easy. So if any of these words are not making sense, please, like, leave it in the comments. I'll be sure to respond and make it make sense. So luckily, and I say luckily now because at the time I was like, what the heck? Why? But luckily, they were unable to, like, talk to her because there was, like, no release of information signed, which is, like, basically HIPAA, which is, like, the privacy stuff that treatment centers and hospitals and doctors all use. Like, you can't talk on somebody's behalf without a signature, basically, which is a release of information. And I didn't have the means or the access to, like, a fax machine to be able to sign it, so I had to make the phone calls myself. And that's why I say luckily, because I'm glad that I had to, it wasn't just easy for me to get into treatment, right? I'm glad I had to, like, do things on my own to get into treatment. Now, that's not to say, like, don't get me into my, like, theories on how to get sober, but, like, some people need that help. Some people truly want to get clean but cannot put 1 and 2 and 3 together to get it done. And so instead they will just stay in their addiction over and over and over. The thing with me was that I had done that so many times where people had helped me get into treatment. People had done everything for me. And I was at the point in my addiction where nobody, like my family, wasn't willing to do that for me anymore. And my PCAP worker was unable to. And so I had to do it. I just had to call. It wasn't a lot. To what people who haven't been through this might say, like, this isn't a lot. But when you're dealing with an addiction every day, it's a lot to make phone calls and, you know, leave a message for somebody and have a phone number that they can call you back on, and then, you know, be there to answer a phone call, and then, you know, set up. It's a lot of work, like just calls. It's not a lot of work truly, but it's a lot of work when you're in an addiction. So anyways, started making these phone calls. I started making these phone calls, and I knew what treatment center I wanted to go to. I knew the treatment center that was basically the only option for me. So when I finally got through and was able to talk on the phone to the lady who scheduled the bed dates, you know, she was able to get me into detox, like, I want to say it was like 3 to 4 weeks out, right? And so that was that. Like, I made the date, and that was that. And all I had to do at that point was make it to the bed date, to the detox bed date. And then after detox, the detox was there at that treatment center, and then my intention was to go to I was crossing my fingers that I was going to get into treatment after detox, but they almost assured me I would. So, you know, so I'm sure eventually I'll tell some stories from in between this time and then, but I'm trying to think if there's anything that stands out from that point to, you know, the days before treatment. But basically what happened is, you know, I stayed in that hotel. I ended up, I think I told this story on my channel, where my grandma helped me get away from the police because I knew I had a bed date, and nobody wanted me to miss the bed date. So, you know, I remember though, as my bed date was getting closer and closer, it was at first it was like I was telling myself, like, okay, only a week left out here, only 5 days left out here. But then I started getting scared. Then I started getting worried and nervous, and, you know, trying to like sabotage what I was doing, and being like, you know, why are you even doing this, Kayla? This is when my addict was like the loudest. Like, why are you even, when I say my addict, I'm talking about like my addict mind was like yelling these things in my brain. Like, why are you even trying? You know, you're never going to make it. You're never going to stay sober. You're never going to get your kids back. You don't deserve them. Like, all of the negative self-talk you could think of is what was going on for me. And every time I've ever gone to treatment, right, leading up to treatment, which is why it's such a, you know, why it's so hard for people to get to treatment. You know, it's not like you can just be like, okay, I'm going to go to treatment today. There's a whole lot of like steps and emotions and just stuff that goes on before you go to treatment. So, you know, I don't know. I believe it was, you know, a whole lot having to do with, you know, God looking out for me to get me to treatment, you know, and, you know, I think, I remember I spent a lot of time in the casino right before I went to treatment, and that was a good way for me, I mean, good way, but it was a way for me to pass time and to not think about what was coming. And I spent a lot of time there, and, you know, I had basically the night before treatment, I tried to not tell people that I was going to treatment because I knew if I started telling people I was going to treatment, then people were going to start, it's a normal thing when people in the street know that people are leaving, they'll like do things to, start taking all their stuff, and which happened. A lot of my stuff got taken, which I had plenty of stuff. I was all right. But, so I called this guy I knew who, again, was friends of Eric and I in the street. And he was like this big dude. He was from Chicago. And he had like this like intimidating personality. And he also sold drugs, both the drugs that I needed at that time. And I called him and I said, hey, and he was somebody who he didn't use. He just sold drugs. And he was somebody for a long time who had been telling both Eric and I that, we need to get off drugs because, we would do a lot better without them. So anyways, I called him and I said, hey, I'm going to treatment tomorrow. Do you want to come over? Because I called him not because I wanted to say bye to him so bad. It was because I knew he would be proud that I was leaving and would be willing to just give me drugs, right? And at that point, like, that's why people who are just going to treatment, like, although they're going to treatment to get off drugs, the best thing to do, I mean, I don't know if this is the best thing to do, but in my opinion, I knew I was going to get off drugs. So I wanted to do drugs while I still could, right? And that's just like, frankly, what it was. And so I knew he wasn't going to give me a hard time. I knew he would just give the drugs to me. And that would be that, right? And I didn't want to have to go out again and jump in and out of cars and do all this crazy stuff that I was doing to get high. I just wanted to get high in peace before I took this next step in life, right? And I'm grateful that he did that. People might say like, no, but I'm telling you, if anything can happen, and yeah, anything can happen. I could have overdosed and died right before I went to treatment, but the reality is I was happy to be able to stay safe in my room and just get high before I went to treatment because, although I want to change my life at that point, I'm physically and mentally addicted. I'm in my addiction, and I feel like at this point I'm trying to make excuses, like like this is like so old behavior, like I'm making all the excuses in the world as to why I'm getting high, but the reality is I was getting high because I was addicted. Like, that's what it was. And so I called somebody I knew who would give me drugs. I don't know why I'm trying to like talk through this, like, to make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like, I was getting high. It's never going to make sense. But anyways, I called him. He came over. He was happy to come over because I had a hotel room that was in my name and paid up. I had already paid. I was paid in advance. Like, I had paid the whole week. I didn't pay it, but somebody paid it. Anyways, he was happy to come because, like I said, he sold drugs. So he was like, yeah, of course I'll come. And so it was, we were both benefiting. He came and sold drugs out of my room, and I got high. And it was a pretty, like, low-key night. Like, I was getting high, and I didn't start packing my bags until, my ride wasn't going to get there until 8 a.m. And I remember I started packing at, like, 3. And I spent a lot of time in the bathroom just crying and crying and crying because it was like, for so many times in my life, I've gone to treatment and failed, that I was just like, please let this stick. Like, please, because it's like draining on my family, and it was draining on everybody, but it's draining on me too, to get my hopes up to, live life different and then just do it all over again. It was getting hard to like I said, to have hope. So I spent a lot of time in the bathroom just crying, getting high, packing, getting high. And I didn't sleep at all the night before. I didn't sleep days before, actually. But I didn't start packing till 3 because my ride was going to come at 5. So I remember I had like just finished packing, like putting, and I had like, when I showed up at treatment, any of the girls who were in treatment with me can tell you this. I had bags, like bags and bags and bags of just clothes. And by the time treatment was over, none of those clothes fit me. So it was like, but I finished packing, and I swear it was like I went back into the bathroom to get high, and like all of a sudden there was like a really loud knock at the door, like knock, 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 like what I thought was like the police, right? And I'm like, what the heck is going on, right? And he looks out the people, and he's like, it's this little short white girl. And I'm like, what? And I look out the people, and it's my PCAP worker. But it's like 5 a.m. She's like 3 hours early, right? And I'm like, what in the world? Like, why is she here early? And he did not, like, the guy that had came to stay, I opened the door. I'm like, hey, come in, Leanna. Oh, sorry. What's her name? Like, hey, come in. And I look at him. I'm like, first I looked at her. I'm like, why are you here early? She was like, I can't talk about it right now, but we gotta go. We gotta hurry, right? And I looked at him, and I was like, please. Like, I didn't have to say anything, but please. He was like, here, Kayla, I'm gonna give you this, and I'm getting your bags in the car, right? So he gave me something, and he started carrying all my bags out. So I went in the bathroom one last time, got high, cried, came out. All my bags were already in the car, and all I had to do was walk to the car, right? And I was just like looking around, like I had no faith in anything at all. I was just like, I'll be back, I'll be back. And I remember he gave me a hug. He said, you got this, you can do this, don't come back out here. And I was just like, okay, I won't. But I had no faith, right? And yeah, and we got in the car. And then there was a whole nother, I still stopped on the way to treatment and did the whole, no, that was another time. But anyways, that was that. And so I went to treatment. So I think I'll stop here because I think the next thing I'm going to talk about is getting to detox and how all that went. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for, this is like therapy, kind of telling this and like being able to reflect on it and stuff. So if there's any questions about any of that, please let me know. Okay? Thanks again for 100 subscribers. I really appreciate it, you guys. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye.